everyone, my name's Chief Bromden. I recently escaped the mental hospital, but of course you guys already knew that. I was invited here today to talk about my gruesome experiences in the mental hospital and my growth as a person since being admitted and escaping. So let's talk about how I regained my sanity from the fog and I escaped the grasp of the Combine's conformity. First of all, it all started from my family. My father is a large man who's the chief of the Columbia tribe of natives, and his name is Chief Tia Milatuna. My mother is a strong white woman named Mary Louise Bromden. My father took on her last name, which meant she has dominance over him in our culture. This brought a really strange family dynamic to the table, especially since my mother was a woman not of native culture. This made growing up very confusing and I was lost as a kid. So, one day when I was 10 years old, I was home alone and some government officials came knocking on my door. They asked if they could speak to my parents and they said they are here to buy land and build a hydroelectric dam. When I tried talking to them, they acted as if I wasn't there. They acted as if I was deaf and dumb. So, when my parents got there, they dismissed the officials and they started talking. I could see the power my mother held over my father. She was able to convince my giant of a father to sell the land, and I saw how powerless and helpless he was. So after that day, I just began to withdraw into myself and let the world believe I was deaf and dumb. To be honest, I don't even remember why I was put into the mental hospital to begin with. My guesses are either the decline of my father sent me into a breakdown or fighting in World War II, but to be honest, I could have been completely sane. However, I was there for 10 years, and during my stay I was diagnosed of paranoid schizophrenic because I had visual delusions and hallucinations. I would see this constant fog around me and I would slip away into my medicated state, losing all sense of reality. Don't even get me started on the Combine. The Combine was this controlling force against human nature. I saw it as the reason my homeland was taken from me and why my human nature was gone as well. It didn't help that the Nurse Ratched, was an army control freak that tried to turn all the patients into normal people. She ran the ward on such a strict schedule, she could call it a boot camp. She also used to guilt and shame us into make us feel horrible about ourselves. She would make the patients take turns in attacking each other in the most vulnerable ways in order for them to submit to her. And then when the patients did not submit, she would give them electroshock therapy or even lobotomize them. She would do this just to hold some power over the patients and keep them docile. Since this became my life, my only instinct was to withdraw further and ramp up the deafness and stupidity. I was forced to do so many medications, treatments, and electroshock therapy that the medical machines and instruments became tools for the Combine's control over human. Everything about that hospital made me crazier, and after a while I felt so small and helpless. I became known as Chief Broom since all I could do was sweep the halls with a blank stare. People would walk all over me as if I wasn't a person at all. I never stood up for myself. I let people think of me the way I wanted to and dove headfirst into my craziness. That was my life. Sweeping the halls, listening on conversations, and trying to stay out the wrath of Nurse Ratched. Towards the end of my stay, one thing changed my whole life forever. One day, I regained my consciousness from one of my treatments, as I do regularly, and I saw the public relations man walking around. I knew this meant we had someone new entering the institution, and I overheard it was someone here involuntarily. And then I saw Randall McMurphy. He was a large, confident redhead, a boisterous man with a devilish grin. The day he walked through, he was laughing at all the patients staring in shock. It was the first real laugh I heard in years. No, it was the first real laugh I heard in the hospital in years. So McMurphy settled in, and the next day during group meeting, he started making lewd jokes directed at Nurse Ratched. She fired back with the fact that Mr. McMurphy is in the hospital for a statutory rape charge. He was unbothered by the comment and started telling the whole ward about how his 15-year-old lover was a very promiscuous girl. He made the whole ward laugh by his rebellious action. Even Dr. Spivey was getting a chuckle out of McMurphy's behavior. These scenes continued for a couple of weeks. For example, he hosted a protest in the TV room to watch the World Series because Nurse Ratched said no, since it's during allotted cleaning hours. She was furious and screamed off her head. It was quite the sight, to be honest. He became the leader to the patients and continued to stand up for them, even if he got discouraged by the nurses. He was slowly bringing life back to the people, and I realized it was the same for me. Over time, he had been helping me keep the fog away, and I was finally able to grasp some sort of reality. I kept watching his escapades, and he acted like he was on a mission to properly rehabilitate the patients. The crazier part was it was working. Everybody soon started following him, and One day, about halfway through his stay, he was able to convince staff to let himself and 10 other patients go on a supervised fishing trip. I came along and it was an experience like no other. He showed us how to push out the hostility of the world and how catching fish made us feel powerful and masculine. In the past 10 years I was in the mental hospital, that was the only moment where I felt reality come back to me and when the grips of the combines loosened. While we were still fishing, McMurphy heard that one of the patients, Billy, hasn't lost his virginity. So, McMurphy decides to arrange a prostitute so that Billy can lose his virginity. However, before that was arranged, we came back from our fishing trip and Nurse Ratched ordered us to wash our genitals. One of the patients with us named George was afraid of the soap and asked if he could not do it. Nurse Ratched started berating him, and not long after, McMurphy started to fight to allow time for George to get away. I joined him out of nowhere because I knew I needed to protect George from her wrath. I felt so alive with McMurphy during the fight. I felt as if I was in full control of myself. I rarely saw the fog, and the machines and the combines agenda no longer scared me. After all that, we got sent to the electroshock therapy wards for our actions. I felt a slight slip in reality when I came to, but McMurphy looked and acted as if it didn't affect him. But I knew that deep inside, that really rattled him. After that little hiccup, we got back to planning on how we'd get Billy and the prostitute to the mental hospital. And McMurphy decides we're going to have a party. So he begins by bribing the night aide, Mr. Turkle, to let Candy in the prostitute. After that, the party began. There were drinks and marijuana, and Billy finally lost his virginity. It was an amazing night, since one of the patients tried convincing McMurphy to escape right now, but he got too wasted and fell asleep. So the next day, while everyone was sleeping, Nurse Ratched came in and saw the mess. To say the least, she went ballistic. Things got violent. She threatened Billy by saying she would tell his mother about what he did. It made him hysterical, and he killed himself by slashing his throat that morning. This sent McMurphy into a blind rage, attacking Nurse Ratched, ripping her clothes off and choking her. As a result of all of this, McMurphy gets sent and punished to the disturbed ward, where the electroshock therapy is. But when he came back, he was an old McMurphy that everyone loved. He was docile. That's when I snapped back to reality. That's when I decided I was going to escape. However, before that, I knew I had something to do. I had to kill McMurphy, so that he wouldn't be left to be some symbol of Nurse Ratched's power. He had to go out with some dignity, on his own terms. So I planned to do it right before I escaped. The night I escaped, he helped me with everything, even into the last steps before freedom. So that's when I strangled him and fled the institution. I was finally free from the fog, and I was finally me again. Thank you for listening.